Do you have the creative brief?
Go fish!
Do you have the project's deadline?
Go fish.
Take back control of work. Reich helps your team work as one.
Got it!
Hi everyone, welcome to the Product Marketing Festival. Thank you so much for tuning in. We hope you enjoy the sessions that we have lined up for you today. With expert presentations, specialist talks and deep dive panel sessions on the agenda, suffice to say, you're in for a treat. Just before we jump in, I want to take a moment to thank everyone who's played a part in making this event possible. Our sponsors, partners, speakers, presenters, and of course you, the product marketing community. You can engage with all our speakers and their sessions today by posting your questions in the comments section of the broadcast, or you can reach out to them in our Slack community. Remember, you can catch up with all this week's content on demand, plus a whole host of other amazing benefits by becoming a PMA member. And whilst you're at it, why not check out Product Marketing Core, our industry-renowned certification. But for now, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our next session.
Good afternoon. My name is Knuppe, Product Marketing Lead at Mollie. And today we'll be talking about how us product marketers can future-proof our function and learn a little bit about how and when you'll need to scale your team. A task much easier said than done. Why I believe this story is so important is that there really isn't a how-to guide out there that prepares you for these situations. How do you know when you need to scale your team? Is it as simple and obvious as finding yourself working 80-hour work weeks on the brink of burnout? Or is there an easier way? How do you avoid singing the same hiring anthem every quarter, but your song is not heard by management or HR? Something I found increasingly frustrating. And how do you make a strong case for a new hire over priority hires such as engineering or product management? And what I hope you take away from this presentation is a few key learnings on how to not only set yourself up for success, but also your team. So during my career, I've had the opportunity to build multidisciplinary marketing teams at Tencent and now more recently at Mollie. And each journey has had its own unique challenges and learnings. And when I'm not exploring team dynamics, putting out fires, trying to hire faster than lightning bolts, I generally spend my time outside of work, cooking, and trying not to burn down the kitchen at the same time. I'm extremely passionate about the practice of product marketing and a true advocate for the role we play in driving a business's products positioning, adoption, and usage, all whilst keeping the customer at the center of everything we do. So a little bit about Mollie. So Mollie is a European fintech company powering the growth of just over 120,000 customers' online payments. We might look and sound like a scale-up, and indeed, we are in fact scaling at hyper growth rates, but we've really been in the online payments industry for about over 16 years, so we really know a thing or two about conversion and chargebacks. So why the need to scale now? And I think, clearly defining the value that we offer our customers, it's something that's been consistent throughout the narrative of Mollie's business lifecycle. And with the acceleration of offline businesses to online throughout the pandemic, it's catapulted our growth tenfold. And with more businesses wanting, more of Mollie, we need to meet this growth and ensure that we can scale our businesses end-to-end offering to exceed the demand that we're experiencing across Europe. So what will we discuss today? In the most literal and honest way possible, I'll take you through my journey of landing in an incredibly promising hot mess and take you through the wonderful and not so wonderful challenges I faced from starting as one PMM 6 months ago to leading a multidisciplinary PMM team, overseeing go-to-market, commerce enablement, segmentation, targeting, positioning, and research and insights. So I think one of the biggest challenges we face as product marketers is that the practice of product marketing is so diverse, and it takes many different forms depending on the industry, company lifecycle, or customer segment your function is servicing. And what this really means is that sometimes it's not always clear where responsibility and accountability starts and ends across various work streams where PMMs typically own. And a key insight that I've learned and leveraged at both Tencent and Mollie is that we don't leverage the product roadmap enough. And I believe we're an extension of the product engineering roadmap. And most times, if not every time, what goes in usually has to come out, meaning that in one way or another, the work that our product teams deliver will need to be shipped, meaning that in some shape or form, there will need to be an update targeted at our end user. And if we really need to think about it and remove all the noise, I really believe that, we need to do 4 things incredibly well. But, these are not just 4 simple tasks. These are entire work streams. So you also need to be realistic about what you can confidently deliver, and even more realistic about what you can't. And I so often hear, managers saying, just say no. Have you said no to your VP or your new CTO? It's a daunting task. So what I will try and do today is explain a very diplomatic way to logically enable yourself to actually say no. And I'll explain a little bit more about this shortly. So let's use a real world example. So you might be thinking, that's a cute tank, and it is, but it's a tank on its own. No cavalry, no air support. Maybe it doesn't even have any diesel in it. And if you're really preparing for war, or at least planning to build your PMM army, you're probably going to need more than one tank. And I think that, scaling your PMM function, it's a challenging task, but it's also incredibly fulfilling and rewarding. So how do you know when to scale? And, really what I encountered was that there are sometimes obvious signs and there are sometimes not so obvious signs. And what I'll talk you through over the next few minutes is really trying to understand what these signals look like and how to act on them. The first time around, the signs are not so obvious. We're so focused on execution. We start to think that working 12-hour days, most, if not all weekends, becomes the norm. And to be honest, it's not. And burnout is a real thing. But we're humans, we're not robots, and we want to exceed expectations. We want to deliver. We want to prove ourselves. And that's totally okay. But we need to approach this in a way that's realistic and respectful to ourselves, and more importantly, the quality of work that we aspire to deliver. And we often talk about the golden PMM x PM ratio, product managers to product marketing managers. What's healthy, what's not healthy. And what I mentioned earlier is that usually what goes in must come out. And I was at a point where I was servicing upwards of 5, 6, or 7 at a time of product managers. And they're all releasing and planning different features that require some sort of communication or launch. And trying to understand that you can do this on your own and trying to make a case for that is your first mistake. So how do you quantify the problem? And this is quite a manual process, which takes about 30 minutes, but the output is potentially life-changing. At least it was for me. So I had several product launches over the next quarter, and all of them involved your typical product launch: material development, research, planning, stakeholder management, alignment, team updates, you know the list. And I felt, looking at my quarterly activity plan, it's impossible to launch all of this, at least if I still wanted to have some sort of life outside of the office. So what I did is I categorized each different type of GTM that we needed to launch. And I allocated the time associated with each tier to really help both myself and other teams outside of the product org really understand how much planning and hours actually require this launch to be successful. And I went back over the duration of 2 months and categorized all the time that I was in meetings, kickoffs, research. And, I really started to see that I needed to deliver at least, 3 tier 2 GTM launches within the next 10 weeks. And this was nearly impossible. So it was possible, but I would be working 8 to 8 and probably most weekends, which means that it's not the most sustainable approach. And what I started to see was how and why I needed to scale my function. And it was now becoming glaringly obvious, not only to me, but also to my manager, is that if you want to increase your team's capacity and accelerate your delivery, you really have to understand how much you can confidently deliver on and what you cannot. And I think it's really important that, in order to do a good job and not set yourself up for success, but also for your stakeholders, here's where, the key difference is with being able to communicate and articulate what's realistically deliverable and what's not, and then really setting a precedent on, putting it back to the product team and telling them what they need to prioritize. And I think the point that I mentioned earlier was leveraging the roadmap, like use the product roadmap to your advantage, not against you. And now that the different stakeholders, as I said, were aware of the different types of GTM, the amount of hours that was needed, we really needed to make a decision on what do we prioritize. How do you understand when you're looking at a priority matrix for your engineering teams to make sure that we're launching features and products that are servicing our customers and not making us lose customers, but gain customers? That's something that you can give advice on and guidance, but it's not something for you, I believe, to have a final decision on. And you really need to push back on the product teams to say, well, this is realistically what we can do. And if not, you need to hire more. And that was probably the easiest point in the whole overview and kind of restructuring my function and why we needed additional capacity, was that all teams now clearly understood the challenge that I, as a product marketer, faced on my own. So what can you take away from today? Sometimes it's a simple audit of your time available versus time needed to meet your business's go-to-market requirements, or just to be able to quantify your entire product marketing scope and the different types of work streams that you need to deliver across over and above the launches that you might need to be seeing through. So if we had to recap on 3 lessons to help you with your hiring narrative, one would be to define your environment. And that's, as mentioned, a simple audit of the time needed to carry out your PMM function. 2 would be, define your reality. And that's really going back and looking at forward-looking versus retrospectively and what you can accomplish on your own. And if you had one more headcount, how would that accelerate your team's delivery and quality of work? And 3 is really, communicating your reality. So everything that you've audited, writing out, how would you shape this narrative and who do you want this narrative to land with? Typically, it would be your line manager, maybe potentially other heads of departments that you work with or sit outside of your peripheral. And I hope that, from the learnings that I've shared, it's not that hard. It might take some time to do the audit and compile the rationale, but I found that this process is simple, it's honest, it's transparent, it really works, and I hope that it helps you build your product marketing foundation. If you have any questions, please reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to have a chat or a quick virtual coffee, or ping me on the Product Marketing Alliance Slack channel. Thanks so much.
Product marketers, are you sick of making case studies, data sheets, product videos, and other content to see it go unused by sales? They say they can't find it and that it's difficult to organize. And good content goes unused because there's so much of it. You know your awesome content will convert buyers, but only if sales reps can find and share it. At Enablix, we believe that life is too short for good content to go wasted. Hit us up to see how our simplified sales enablement solution helps product marketers drive revenue with their content.
Hello, wherever you're joining us from today, I want to say a huge welcome to our global community. We hope you're enjoying the Product Marketing Festival. I also want to send out an extra special thank you to all our sponsors, partners, speakers and participants who together have made this event possible. Their sessions are bursting with insights to help you level up. But remember, the learning doesn't stop here. If you aren't already, you can become a PMA member and benefit from unlimited access to exclusive templates, frameworks, mentors and our entire library of on-demand event content. Make sure you have your questions at the ready. Simply post your question in the comments section and get awesome advice directly from our expert speakers. Or continue the conversation with your fellow product marketers in the PMA Slack community. What's not to love about that? So now, on to the next talk.
Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in today. I'm sure you've all been enjoying some of the great presentations, roundtables and panel discussions that have been taking place so far at the Product Marketing Festival. My talk today is going to be focused on product marketing in the new normal. Hopefully this information is going to be beneficial to the audience who are currently or will shortly find themselves either leading or working within a hybrid team that's splitting their time between the office and remotely. Some actionable insights based on some of the internal and external market research that we've been doing, as well as some of the approaches that you can take back to your own teams and organizations to consider implementing. So what I'm really going to look at today is these four areas. So firstly, looking at some of the major shifts that have taken place as a result of the pandemic and see what this means for the future of work. What role the office is expected to play for staff and organizations and how their views differ. Managing teams and some of the opportunities and challenges you'll be faced with as remote and hybrid working teams remain even after the offices are fully open. And then finally, some of the approaches that best-in-class teams and analyst houses are recommending on the best way to set up for success in the new normal. Before we jump right into all of that, I just want to do a quick introduction of myself. My name is Michael McCann, and as some of you might guess based on my accent, I'm based in Dublin, Ireland. I've been working in marketing and advertising roles ever since I graduated approximately 12 years ago. A large part of my early career was spent working in the advertising industry, mainly in telecommunications, postal, banking, and retail industries, before really focusing on product marketing in the last 4 years. The last 10 months have been interesting for me, becoming a homeowner for the first time, becoming a dad for the first time, and also changing jobs to work for GoTo by LogMeIn, where I've really enjoyed working remotely and spending time with my new family. LogMeIn itself is a company whose entire product portfolio is built to empower working from anywhere. I specifically focus on our GoTo product range, which some of you might be familiar with, GoToMeeting, GoToWebinar, GoToConnect. Which includes video and audio conferencing, online events, webinars, cloud calling, conference room software, etc., which I'm sure a lot of you are much more familiar with now than you were pre-pandemic. So yeah, the first section is really just looking at COVID-19's impact on the workforce. And I really first wanted to look at where we were, where we are now, and where things are going, right? It's a real hot topic at the moment, as a lot of the workforce around the globe are preparing for some form of return to the office. We can see that pre-COVID, just over 1 in 10 primarily worked away from the office, whereas COVID really turned this on its head with almost the exact reverse, now working from home on a full-time basis. The last 15 plus months have really altered things. I don't want to say forever, but definitely for the foreseeable future. We can see that post-COVID, we actually expect to see 38% initially and primarily working away from the offices. Yes, offices are going to open. Yes, organizations will go back to the office as their primary place to work, but increasingly we are seeing the introduction of remote working teams and the introduction of hybrid working, which is essentially splitting your time between the office and between remotely. We can see that the chart on the right, there's a real preference for hybrid working policy for both employers and employees. However, we can also see a large disparity where employers are very keen to have people back in the office and employees vote higher to actually work remotely full time. So we're looking at where people are working, but I guess how they will work and what the makeup of this is still undecided for a lot of companies. So we can see that close to 55% of companies have actually a plan decided already, whereas a large portion are actually still undecided. In this particular study from Metrigy, nearly 40% are still undecided as to what they're going to do or what their working policy will be. We can see similar figures right across the board in multiple studies and industries. Of course, there's going to be variations, but just plus 50% with a plan in place is often what's cited. So what we want to do is examine further how some of the more prominent companies are actually approaching their working policy. And we can see, if we look at Twitter, we can see that it doesn't really want its staff to come back to the office at all, at least not full time. They're letting employees work partially or fully remotely, and they really want to make sure that everyone adheres to the new policies and they create equality. Offices will remain open for those that actually do want to go in. Apple just recently announced its remote work policy, and they just shared it in a memo to staff, and they said that the offices will be back open in September, and staff will have to come back in the office 3 days a week. However, they're going to be available to work from home on Wednesdays and Fridays. Morgan Stanley, like a lot of other financial companies in particular, are not as openly positive or embracing the hybrid working policies, and have actually stated that arrangements will be made and they'll vary based on employee and the job itself. Facebook, as of this recording, are still undecided. And again, some employees at Facebook, they're unhappy with the system for choosing who can work fully remotely. They haven't set out the ongoing policy, but the current structure in place has it so only staff at certain levels can actually apply, certain seniority levels can apply to work remotely. It does vary by departments, and Facebook have actually come out and said that, you know, of those that have applied to work remotely, nearly 90% have actually been approved to do so. Amazon, on the other hand, actually believe the best way to keep its foothold as a leading tech giant is by bringing everyone back to the office for a very office-centric culture, and they want to do so as soon as it is safe to do so. Next up, we want to look at some of the drivers, like what are some of the key drivers for remote work from an employee perspective. And, you know, the last 15 months you could really view as an experiment, right? There was, of course, always people doing it. Some industries were further ahead than others. Professional services or IT were much better offering flexibility. I guess now everyone has really had a chance to experience this. And they're willing to actually, and we can see by the results, they're willing to stay at a company for longer that actually allows them to work flexibly. If they find themselves in the job market, or you yourself find yourself in the job market seeking to recruit talent, offering flexible working is extremely high in their list of criteria before actually applying for a job within an organization. A high percentage of employees are even willing to accept a job for less pay when they have that flexibility. You know, when we consider what's happened over the last 12 to 15 months, you know, despite the global pandemic, business challenges, people losing jobs or being furloughed, those people that actually were working were fundamentally happier, right? They weren't having to commute, and they had the freedom and flexibility to work from anywhere. It was allowing them, as we can see from the results, to avoid burnout, and they really felt like this actually increased their productivity levels. I myself can relate to this as a new dad. You know, not having to commute for half an hour or an hour and a half each day. Some day goes back to my work. A lot of it goes back to my family. You know, getting to be home and witness certain milestones with my new family that, you know, I otherwise would have missed. So these are some of the benefits that people are experiencing. And I guess the locations and the way we are working is really changing because employees wanted to change. They really wanted that much. And they've actually proved that they can keep their productivity levels high and the business can continue to operate at its pre-pandemic levels. However, you know, it's not all clear sailing. It does seem like there's still quite a bit of work to do because business decision makers actually tend to view things differently. We can actually see that there's quite a large disparity between what employees perceive in terms of productivity and the ability to get work done, and what actually decision makers perceive. And unfortunately, trust is being thrown in the spotlight, and it's really flagged as an area of concern. We can also see that when speaking to these decision makers, that less than 1% of them actually believe they're doing everything they can to design a successful remote work strategy. In theory, this dual hybrid structure is the best for most organizations. In practice, it's actually the hardest to get right, and there's certainly still a lot of work to be done. In this section, I want to look at the new role of the office, right? And how does the urge to return to the office differ between employees and the organizations themselves? So, why do staff want to return to the office? Looking at an array of research on this, we see the same 5 reasons really pop up over and over again. Collaboration is really never present, often top of the list. Staff want to come back and meet their colleagues. They want to see some new faces and catch up with old friends. They miss physical meetings, whether scheduled or impromptu. They miss the energy of those physical meetings. They're keen to get away from some of the distractions with their current office setup. And they actually flag that technology and equipment available in the office is some of the reasons which actually they're actually seeking to return and avail of. Looking more closely at one of our own studies below, run in conjunction with Forrester, when we asked employees how to compare how they worked as a remote worker versus in office, we can see that these are some of the reasons in office won out, or these are some of the areas in office won out, right? Internal collaboration comes out on top, not just internal, but externally. The ability to communicate outside of their office, the ability to brainstorm, and really to better serve customers are seen as some of the better reasons and the better outputs for workers when they actually return back into the office. So then looking at what companies want. So why do they want staff to return to the office? Again, collaboration, one of the top reasons. I guess along with collaboration, culture came out quite often. So they really are keen to protect and start to grow the company culture once more. And I felt like they really struggled with this during the pandemic, right? Companies are also feel that remote working really doesn't foster innovation. It really doesn't help their company and what they're seeking there. There's also, as we can see below, there's also a lack of trust, and hence the urgency to get remote workers actually back to the office and have bums in seats. And finally, the last one that came up quite often is onboarding. They're quite concerned that a lot of the new hires who have been onboarding aren't doing so properly, and they're quite keen to get them back in the office. So again, similarly, looking at our study, we can see that organizations feel productivity is better in office, as is collaboration and innovation. Companies also trust in their office workers to get more work done when in the office. They actually view this as more team orientated. I guess these are some of the views that can, and I think will, lead to problems in the business if remote workers are kind of seen as second-class citizens, or certain biases are not removed. In the third section, this section, I just want to look at new hybrid working considerations for product marketing teams. What are some of the opportunities and challenges that I guess arise based on the mass adoption of hybrid working? First, I guess I wanted to set the scene a little bit on what some of the experts think. This isn't to scare everyone. I guess it's rather to kind of ensure people and make sure you guys are clear that this really is uncharted territory, right? This isn't what we've done previously. It's not what we're doing now. Hybrid is fundamentally different. And I guess some key quotes when I was doing some of my research for this talk was, the Boston Consulting Group. They feel like a lot of people assume that because we know how to work together in the office, we know how to work apart, that we can actually do hybrid. Their view is hybrids really is that third way. It's going to be incredibly difficult to do, and it's a problem that we're all going to have to look to solve. The CEO of GitLab colorfully put, hybrid remote work offers the worst of both worlds. Hybrid creates two fundamentally different employee experiences to manage. It's hard, maybe even impossible, to find any credible experts who would argue it's going to be it's not going to be a rough ride. Then we look at the Columbia Business School. They say that in as much as companies are moving to establish guidelines, and we can see that from some of the research, there's actually not a lot of evidence as to what the right approach is. their view is it's going to be chaotic over the next 6 months, and it wouldn't surprise me that some of the policies that are actually put in place, there's wholesale reversals of those policies. I guess looking at some of the opportunities, right? Some of the ones I wanted to pull out were business decision-making inclusion. And I guess what I mean by that is, we at LogMeIn and GoTo, we survey and speak to a lot of IT buyers and budget holders, and there's a real big surge in budget being put aside to improve staff productivity, analytics, communications, and collaborations. We think that now is really the time for product marketing, or the product marketing org in general, to really have input in what tools and systems are put in place. We know that the non-IT buyer is much more influential post-pandemic in terms of choosing what services and tools are rolled out. And I guess if you're not sitting on the buying committee, or marketing isn't, then I would really recommend you guys listening to kind of raise your hand to do so. I guess communications planning is another big one. We see a lot of highly effective teams outline, how their channels are used, what are the requirements, is Slack for more informal updates, calls to escalate, emails to bring in wider groups. So I guess we're seeing that a lot of really effective teams are kind of laying this out and making it really clear and transparent. A lot of companies are setting ground rules and trying to, I guess, ensure equal participation in video and audio conferencing. So it might sound counterintuitive, but if you're actually attending a meeting and you're heading to in a meeting room, they're actually recommending for staff to actually bring their own laptops, log on to their personal devices, so we have that equality, right? So everyone can see their faces. It's kind of that equal situation, whether you're hybrid or you're in the office or you're actually working remotely. And then finally, utilizing some of the available technology. So of course, rolling out best-in-class UCC technology, video conferencing, cloud calling, team messaging, webinars, conference room technology, as well as embracing all of those like staple software and features. I guess teams should really be looking to adopt, asynchronous communication through the likes of Loom, transcription technology through the likes of Otter, where the software can actually go to meetings on your behalf and actually take notes. Slack, the Donut app, to kind of buddy up and have virtual coffees, or online whiteboarding software through the likes of Miro. I guess the right technology stack is, it's really key for product marketing to be successful. Some wall-to-wall deployments may be outside of your control, but other smaller, lighter deployments, like some of which I've just mentioned, should really be taken advantage of within the marketing org. And then finally, in this section, moving on to challenges, the fear of the second-class citizen is a real genuine concern among experts and analysts. They are concerned about groupthink. They're concerned about buildups of power, the reluctance to defer to colleagues who are not in the room, and this is really going to lead to a two-tier class system. A lot of focus needs to be put on plugging these information gaps and ensuring information parity. Managers themselves are going to have to remove some of the biases that they have and develop empathy and understanding for the different type of roles and challenges working remotely or in the office their staff are going to face. Mentorship and onboarding. So we know respondents with the least amount of professional experience, 0 to 5 years, are actually much more likely to want to come into the office. They really view the office as an anchor. I guess some companies are actually having to hire more senior staff because they're confident they can ramp up quicker. As you saw earlier, onboarding is a major concern for companies, so that's why they're actually hiring more senior staff to kind of mitigate this issue. We also know the managers are more keen than their workers to actually work from home. They feel like they can get more focused work done, there's less distractions. However, this is a bit of a concern among staff who really feel like they might not get the guidance or mentorship that they need. And then finally, the last one is equipment and resource disparity. So reliability of business communications has never been more critical. All staff who are working from home might not have the best broadband, right? They might be competing for it with multiple roommates. They don't have their own office space. They don't have adequate headphones and microphones, or they find it hard to log into company applications or authenticating. So I guess there's some of the areas which I feel like as managers, people should look at, consider, speak to your staff and understand how can you kind of help them overcome some of these challenges and disparity when working at home. And finally, the last section I wanted to wrap up with is how to really set up for success. And I guess when reviewing multiple analyst recommendations for this, here are some of the key areas that are highlighted consistently. It's not an exhaustive list, but these are the 3 elements that keep coming up. And the first one is strategy and structure. So this should be a key focus for you and your teams. I guess it is important to remember that hybrid working is more of a compromise. It's not a utopia, right? And to get this right, you really need to plan for the right strategy. It's not something you're going to stumble upon. It requires a lot of stakeholders, marketing stakeholders, to really input and roll this out to make sure it's constructive, it's efficient, and it's well communicated. Can you look at stipends, or can you look at a budget that can be given to some of your new hires or remote workers so they can get the equipment they need to set up for success working remotely? And then also businesses, I guess, they need to acknowledge and understand that sentiment is going to change quickly. So it is important to take frequent temperature checks and understanding and check in with your staff to see is what you put in place previously still adequate for today. You also can't take a one-size-fits-all approach, and what works for sales teams might look very different from marketing. I guess how successful teams are kind of operating in this space at the moment is they're really picking up what works and tossing away what doesn't. And I guess they are taking comfort in the fact that there's no clear evidence on what the right approach is. However, you know, some of the areas I'm talking to you about is some of the areas they're actually focusing in. And I guess one thing that has helped in our organization as well as others is those clearly defined personas, right? So once the office does open up once more, are you full-time office, full-time remote, mostly office, etc.? And can you allow your staff to actually select their own preferences? You know, we need to make sure that the personas are actually visible to all, they're clear, and ensuring that marketing teams really, they're not relying on company-wide HR decisions, but they're actually choosing and implementing what works for their own product marketing team. And I guess we can see here at the stat below that employees who know the remote policy criteria are 2 times more likely to experience remote work satisfaction. Then just moving on to technology, another key focus area. Again, you really want to try and have that equal footing for in-office or remote. Your team's tech stack needs to have that high-quality video conferencing, streamlined messaging, you know, digital whiteboarding capabilities. Your technology also needs to be reliable. It's very difficult for IT to troubleshoot and support with the remote workforce. So looking at things like uptime, monitoring, visibility are all real key important areas to consider. As we've discussed before, the office is really seen as a place where people really want to come in and collaborate and get work done, and this is a big focus. However, not everyone is going to be able to be into the office. So if you have maybe 4 in the office and 1 at home, how are you going to make that equal for all, right? How are you going to get engagement across the board? I guess we really need to consider and be aware of the disadvantages of working from home and using tech to preserve some of the benefits. The democratization of data, I guess, is improving. You know, a lot of marketing teams are seeking to gain access to this information, which is maybe previously sat in silos. I guess with more digital transformation because of the pandemic, some of this information is more widely available, and it actually allows you and your teams to make the decisions based on that information. So you should seek to gain access to it. And I guess if there was any doubt, 93% of employees say their productivity depends on a remote tech that they have available to them and what's provided to them. And then again, hybrid teams developing as the office opens up. This is going to be critical for their productivity, but also collaboration and happiness, and ensuring your remote workers are set up for success. And then finally, the last area to focus on is culture. So culture has always been a challenge to strengthen and sustain, but with hybrid work models, the level of difficulty is going to be increased manyfold, right? So what are the specific use cases for your team in and out of the office? It's really important to understand that some people not wanting to go back to the office, it's not an aversion to the office, it's an aversion to going back to the way things were. Also making sure the right protocols and processes are in place and they're clear on what they need to talk to IT about, or in which manner to kind of solve some of their problems, right? We've also touched on this before, but communication is going to be even more critical to help your team and culture thrive. You know, laying out what the purpose is of the key organization and the team's actual purpose. You know, even more critically, hybrid work And managers, they need to be empathetic and understanding to their staff, but they also need to hold them accountable for the results. And this is really going to help foster a better culture within the team itself. And I guess make it clear when and why and how they should actually solicit help and look for help from their managers and team members. And then finally, I guess we also need to be mindful that there is limited opportunities to build meaningful relationships for those that are working remotely, right? So staff are concerned about the lack of visibility. They're concerned about not being in the office. They're concerned about unintentional proximity bias. You know, it's easy to turn to a colleague who's in the office with you to ask them to do something rather than schedule a call and try and do that with your workers who are working remotely, right? And we also know that younger workers disproportionately actually want to go back to the office. And we can see that 67% of employees want more in-person time with colleagues, and it's actually a big focus of business leaders at the moment. And then finally, just to wrap up and just say a thank you, I guess if you are considering a hybrid work environment for your team, where your company is facilitating this across the board, you know, we see a big desire for the workforce to implement this itself. You know, ensure you are communicating this clearly to your teams, and be mindful that if it's not something you're considering, you know, maybe it's something that some of your staff may actually be considering a new role. So again, the three key areas are structure and strategy, your technology stack, and also your culture. These are the areas in which analysts and some of the successful businesses from a remote working perspective are actually focusing on. The list is not exhaustive, but there are three areas we feel like you should focus on. I hope you took something away from today to introduce or consider with your product marketing team. And I guess I wish you and your teams all the best of success as I guess we move into the tail end of the pandemic, where offices start to open again. And if anyone would like to reach out further for any more information, I'd be happy to help. So thanks for listening.
Being an amazing product marketing leader doesn't happen by chance. It happens by habit. Product marketing certified leadership has been built on the back of decades worth of experience from some of the world's best known brands, with one goal in mind: helping you be the best leader you can be. Crammed with real life case studies, over 12 hours worth of content, templates, exams, and more, this course is everything you need to lead with authority, confidence, influence, and innovation. Every piece of material within the 7 modules and 29 chapters has been vetted, tested, and approved by senior level product marketers from companies like Amazon, Uber, and HubSpot, serving up game-changing insights throughout. By the time you've wrapped up the final module, you'll be able to define what it takes to be a great product marketing leader, build and scale your team, understand how to successfully manage your existing team, use methods for leveraging data, know how to become the voice of the customer, understand how teams work cross-functionally, and improve your strategic thinking. The beauty of the course is you'll have the freedom to work your way through the modules at a pace to suit you. It's 100% self-paced. You'll even get lifetime access to the curriculum, paving the way for refresher sessions forevermore. Visit productmarketingalliance.com to get leadership certified and spearhead your journey to the top.
Your customers are your best spokespeople, so you want to make sure your prospects hear what they have to say. After all, trusted endorsements can drive faster sales cycles and boost marketing conversions, which helps you unlock faster growth. But when it comes to going on the record, even your best customers can go silent. And who can blame them? Partnering on case studies is time-consuming, and it's painful to work through the legal approvals often required. Luckily, there's another way. With Tech Validate by SurveyMonkey, you can easily capture feedback from satisfied customers and transform it into powerful content, like verified case studies, testimonials, and reviews. Want charts that show ROI, cost savings, or competitive differentiation? You got it. With our platform, you'll quickly build an arsenal of highly targeted social proof points, segmented by industry, company size, or buyer persona. You'll get the tools to easily deploy your new customer evidence into top marketing channels and put it in front of your sales team to share with prospects. Plus, there's no need to wait for legal for approvals. With Tech Validate, your customers can opt to share their name or provide testimonials anonymously, with all customer evidence validated by a trusted third party. That's why hundreds of companies, big and small, use Tech Validate to get social proof at scale. Ready to see how it works? Watch our product tour today.
Welcome back to the Product Marketing Festival. As we prepare to unleash another exciting session, I just want to say a massive thank you to our partners, sponsors, you, and our ensemble of speakers and participants for helping us bring this event to life. I hope you are finding today's sessions insightful, and I want to remind you that the learnings don't stop here. If you haven't already, you can become a PMA member and benefit from unlimited access to exclusive templates, frameworks, mentors, our entire back catalogue of event content, and much, much more. What's more, you can continue the conversation in the PMA's Slack community. If you aren't already a member, then hop on over and join the discussions today. And remember, this is your chance to get involved. Please share your feedback and questions in the comments section for our speakers to answer. It really is that simple. Let's resume the sessions.
Thank you for joining us today as we chat about the impact of bringing user insights to pre-launch decisions. Here's a quick overview of what we're planning to cover today. First, we're going to get started with brief introductions and kind of set the scene as to why we're passionate about this topic. Then we'll discuss some of the problems that product marketing managers face when it comes to research and testing based on research that we've run ourselves. Then we'll introduce a framework that we use at Maze for testing and validation across different teams, including product marketing management. And lastly, we'll share some case studies from Maze, but also one of our customers. And then at the end, we'll be open for any questions that you may have. Okay, so to kick things off, I'm Bozena, and I'm the Director of Marketing at Maze. And prior to Maze, I was leading product marketing at two Barcelona-based startups, TravelPerk and Type4.
Hi, I'm Naomi. I'm the Senior Product Marketing Manager at Maze. Prior to Maze, I was working with startups in several marketing roles, from like content marketing to marketing manager.
Okay, let's get started. So I wanted to kick things off with explaining why we're passionate about this topic. We believe that modern teams, including product marketing teams, should be able to get user input anytime, anywhere, to unite them with meaningful data they can act on. And improving scalable testing and validation is already happening across product teams. And we believe that product marketing managers can benefit from what we call the research transformation that is happening as well. Currently, for product marketing managers to get insights in a scalable way isn't very easy. And we believe this is a problem because customer insights are the bread and butter of product marketing. Currently, product marketing managers do a lot of qualitative research, but there are so many things that product marketing managers can test in a scalable way with quantitative data. For example, messaging, positioning, copy, collecting feedback and satisfaction post-launch, pricing, use cases, you name it. Really across the kind of workflow of product marketing managers, there's so many opportunities to leverage qualitative data to inform product marketing decisions. So although there are so many different opportunities for product marketing managers to collect quantitative data, there is still a disconnect between how we create and launch products and the way we learn about our users. The way we build, especially in the product team, is generally very agile. It's an agile process, but the way we collect insights from our users isn't. Just to give an example, when I just joined product marketing at TravelPerk, I was tasked with launching a new product, and this was a product that had been released in beta already. And during one of the first kickoff meetings, the product manager expressed a concern about the value proposition. So my initial reaction was, okay, let's test it. And being new in the company, I was still figuring a lot of things out. And after looking into the tooling that was in place, the process to getting access to customers, I just realized that testing the value prop was not going to be a quick and easy thing. We simply didn't have enough time, so we launched it without testing, which is obviously not ideal. And in this situation, I was faced with many obstacles, from lack of appropriate tooling to cumbersome process and getting in touch with customers, to also then, if we would have moved forward with the process of testing that could have happened, a lengthy process to analyzing video-based results. And I also included a quote here from one of the PMMs that we interviewed in our research, which says that I would test messaging, I would test copy, I would test the assets that are being used. Basically, I would test anything, but because of many obstacles that product marketing managers face, a lot of times this just doesn't happen. And Naomi is now going to go into some of the obstacles and problems that product marketing managers face based on the research that we've done.
Yeah, so firstly, one of the core problems that is basically holding PMMs back from gathering these insights prior to launch is the lack of tooling. So right now, what is available to us are the tools which measure performance once we're already live. So we have tools like Hotjar, there's various like ad performance tracking, A/B testing tools, and these all give us a baseline and help us like set the bar for our next launch. And they give us a way to measure and track performance like month on month, but they really leave us in this cycle of like working with hindsight, when if we tested earlier on, we could have avoided the issues that may arise. So some of the issues could be that like once you've launched, there could be something that you need to fix, but then that means that there's reinvestment needed by the team when budget has already been spent or time is no longer a resource that's available. A second thing is that there's a potential that when you've launched something, you might have launched it with less impact than you could have if you had tested. And more often than not, as a PMM, which is a very broad and busy role, you don't always have the time to revisit past launches. You're already on to the next priority. Secondly, in many teams, we found in our conversations with PMMs that they're working closely with customer-facing teams like customer experience or account managers to test messaging, asking them to take different claims to different calls and see how they land. And of course, like cross-team collaboration is super essential. But there's an issue that when you are working with another team and they own the process and the conversation with customers, it means really relying on like external schedules and external priorities, and can become quite a slow process to getting to the insights. Separately to that, it can also become difficult to create a knowledge base of insights this way, because you want to make sure that you're getting all of the details without having to rewatch the recordings of interviews or the conversations, but you also want to ensure that it's not so edited that opinions or assumptions are overshadowing the customer voice. So this leaves teams to kind of carry out research interviews, which are obviously essential, and research interviews are usually carried out one-on-one. They produce a lot of qualitative information and require a lot of investment from both the PMM and from the customer. And because there's so much qualitative information that you draw, it makes the insights that you gather not super actionable straight away. So when it comes to making a change and you have every intention to kind of bring insights to product marketing earlier on in the process and throughout, the tools just aren't really available for you to do so. It's not something that's been solved for PMMs just yet. So product marketers should be able to collect insights autonomously to validate ideas, content, or copy that can echo the voice of the customer.
So what we want to do now is we want to kind of introduce a framework to you that we use at Maze to help us make decisions. Our product marketing team works very closely with our product team. And as we mentioned earlier, product teams have already been moving towards the democratization of testing and data, and in general, more frequent testing and validation along the product development process. And this is what we call rapid testing. And our product marketing team also uses this framework to bring more user data into our product marketing decision-making. And the idea here is to really break down the workflow into small testable inputs that enable learning and the collection of insights along the entire process. So for instance, if you kick off a project with your product manager, you might have some initial ideas and concepts. So the idea is to kind of, once you have defined an initial idea, you test that. Based on the results, you decide whether you move forward with that concept or you go back to the drawing board and maybe iterate on that concept. And that is really the kind of the approach we take for every step along the way. So if you have already drafted some initial value proposition, you collect feedback on that before you move forward or you go back to iterating it. So really kind of building these little testing loops along the entire process to ensure that you're bringing user insights and user input into all of the decisions that you make. Those little tests, those little loops, we call them the IOTA loops. And we generally start by defining the input. So what is the decision we need to make that we need to test and validate? Then we move on to defining the objectives. So this is the quantifiable metric we should reach to validating a decision. So a way to think about this is kind of when you do an A/B test, you generally have an idea of, okay, we need, to hit this metric to know whether A or B was better and then move forward with A or B. And then finally, we set up the test that will help us collect the actionable data we need at scale. So for us, it's really about quantitative data at scale. So when we define the input and the objectives, we really think about what test or how do we set up the test to help collect that data that we need to inform that decision. And then finally, we analyze the results and decide on the next step. So as I mentioned earlier, we decide then, okay, do we move on with that initial idea or that prototype or that copy, or do we need to go back and iterate on it and then run through the loop again? So this is a process that we use internally, for our testing and validation process. Okay, so why do we do this? As mentioned, we're already seeing a research transformation in product teams, and marketing teams are more data-driven or more data-informed than ever. And we believe that learning and failing enables teams to adjust their trajectory quicker by understanding what works and what doesn't. So essentially, the capacity of a company to adjust is what makes it successful. And doing this at a rapid, constant pace allows organizations to remain relevant and continue to deliver value to customers. And in the face of today's increased customer expectations, we believe that speed, especially speed to learning or speed to insights, is a competitive advantage. And by empowering product marketing teams to test rapidly, they're able to get insights early and often. They're able to test and validate before launch. So kind of referring back to what Naomi said previously, it's really about going into launch with more confidence and easily build institutional learning across the organization, because with this framework in place, with these testing loops along the processes, different teams, you really have more people testing, you're collecting more insights, and it really just speeds up learning across the organization. And I guess one note that I do want to make here is that today product marketing managers rely heavily on qualitative research, which is good. And we're not arguing against doing qualitative research. We just believe that quantitative research can also be a powerful lever for product marketing teams. and yeah, empower product marketing teams to really bring data to decision making in a role where deliverables are often really hard to quantify.
Yeah, so as the IOTA loop is a new term that we've coined and the rapid testing framework is new to the PMM space, we want to share some examples with you of how we've put this into practice internally. We also have some examples from people in our network who are currently testing copy and content. And we also have a case study from a customer of ours, BlaBlaCar, who found a need for rapid testing amongst their typical research frameworks that fall into the qualitative category throughout the product team and marketing team. So before diving into the case studies, I just wanted to recap on what PMMs can and should be able to test before they launch. So rapid testing is about bringing user insights to early decisions. And with this in mind, we should be able to test concepts. So like the early stages of messaging or validating new use cases. We should be able to test the content of our landing pages, from CTA placement to taglines to the assets on the page, also the assets which go inside any campaigns that we're launching. And also as product marketers, we are responsible for a lot of naming within the product. So we should be able to get these insights into brand, product and feature naming from users early on as well. And of course, copy as well. So anything from taglines to subject lines to in-app customer communications. Okay, so the first example that I'd like to share with you is how we tested marketing messaging internally at Maze. So when I joined, our new positioning had just been defined and we were gearing up to implement this across all of our channels. We were kind of ramping up to a new website and rebrand. And before we could do this, we needed to establish our messaging and create a central source of truth company-wide. And the way that we decided to create the central source of truth was through a messaging matrix, which would define our primary messaging, so our overarching statement of our product offering, our secondary messaging, which included our value proof points and differentiators. We also included product descriptions and feature descriptions, and finally, persona-specific messaging to determine the value for the buyer. So with the launch of the rebrand looming, we needed fast feedback to start advising for like new website copy, the onboarding emails to make sure that we're really driving the right message home. So as our new positioning introduced new personas and new use cases, it was my goal to validate our primary messaging with each of the 4 defined personas. So we had like designers, product managers, product marketing managers, and user researchers. And what I wanted to learn from this was to ensure that the value of Maze was really being received in the way that we intended, that the language was clear and that it resonated with personas and felt relevant, and also that people understood where rapid testing was supposed to fit within their process. So to do this, I broke down the messaging into 3 alternative claim statements and then created a final variation for each persona. I pulled the claims into a survey in Maze where I added a statement and in a context screen and created sequence questions made up of opinion scales. And these opinion scales were looking at things from, well, they were rating things from uniqueness to relevancy to clarity, whether or not the claim gave too much information or too little information. And a couple of specific questions that I asked were around like, how likely would you be to buy the product based on the claim? How relevant is the claim to your wants and needs? I also added some open questions for users to add more detail on their scores. So I created a list of users within our automation tool, and we sent an email over to them holding the maze and asking for their help, ensuring that we had a good balance of personas so that we could get a good mix of, or to ensure that we had enough data to back up each of the claims. And then within 4 hours, I had over 30 responses and 66 by the end of the day, which is incredible when you think about how long it can take to kind of get the insights qualitatively when you speak over the phone or in person. And also I was really happy to see that even like often within surveys, like sometimes people can leave out a lot of information in the open questions, but people have given us a lot of detail and we were really easily able to identify different themes as well. So from the responses, we found a really positive response in the clarity of the claims as all of the users were mirroring the language that we'd used within the claims, showing deep understanding, And then we gathered really constructive feedback on the language that we'd used, and had some actionable insights of what to change. We found patterns within personas and their response to likability. So we saw where we needed to expand on our research into specific personas and kind of dig a little bit deeper. So it was all completely actionable feedback in less than a day from real users, which was really amazing. Okay, and then the next case study is on feature naming. So in our recent kind of exploration into use cases, we've been speaking with our network, and in particular spoke to a content strategist and friend of ours, Steve, who works in kind of in-app copy, thinking about the UX of a product, the discoverability of features, the clarity of user flows. And we actually got onto the topic of naming. And we discussed how helpful it would be to make users like a real part of this process. So it could be like gathering naming ideas for features, ensuring that, so that you can ensure that the product perceptions are in line with what your users are thinking. And so with this, you could then run an open naming test and presenting users with a context screen, for example, of a feature that you're about to launch or is in concept at the moment, and asking what they think the feature is going to do, and if they have any naming ideas for that. For an example, a question that you could ask would be, try and give this feature a descriptive name based on what it does. Alternatively, you can identify whether a feature name that you've already identified and assumed will work, and push that in front of users to test and validate the naming that you've chosen. So you could share the feature or the screen for context, ask some open questions to determine the understanding of the feature's functionality. You could ask questions like, take a look at the image. What do you think this feature lets you do if switched on? And then ask a follow-up, like, now look at this updated image, like if the feature, and showing some more context on the feature, what do you think the feature lets you do now, given this new information? We actually worked really closely with Steve to integrate these frameworks into simple templates within Maze, so that anyone can kind of adopt these and start bringing rapid testing into their workflow early on. Okay, and then finally we have a case study with BlaBlaCar and how they use rapid testing within their team. So they have an interesting team setup where their UX researchers sit on the product marketing team, along with their content strategist, who also works really closely with product design. Their researchers sit within squads and help the team with discovery projects and with usability testing. And they have a really solid process, which they've proven time and time again, which kind of relies on the qualitative framework that we've kind of been referencing here as being, super essential in improving user experience and validating concepts and ideas. And they're really happy with the way that it's working for the product team and for usability testing, but they've also identified that it does take a longer time. Like it can take up to 3 weeks for them to speak with users and validate their objectives. So for copy and content in particular within the app, they needed something more rapid to kind of quickly test content for fast feedback. So content work really closely with design on the in-app content, and with Maze, they're able to test way earlier in the process whilst they're still in the design phase. And an example that they shared with us was the team had a need to send some company comms to their user base in Russia through the app. And they wanted to kind of direct them on how to navigate a change in their service. And they wanted to confirm how to present this new information positively and test sentiment within the comms. So to validate their copy, they tested a single narrative within their survey, just attaching it simply to a CRM, their CRM tool, and sending the message out to users. They added an image of the content in question, sent it to their users, and the responses came back in real time really quickly. And because they could see how many were coming back, they could stop the campaign when they reached the number of responses that they needed to, and knew what their next steps were. And prior to Maze, they were using guerrilla testing really to run these kind of quick tests with people that just kind of passed by, like in the street or within their office block. But obviously with the arrival of COVID, this wasn't wasn't helpful. And it's also this approach also makes it difficult to reach global markets. So having a tool in place to really validate remotely any copy or any changes that you're trying to make is super helpful and helps you make decisions based on user insights.
Cool. So that's it from us. Just to kind of wrap up, in general, product marketing teams work really closely with product teams. There has been a huge change in the way we build and launch products. Product teams are more agile than ever. So we believe that the way we collect customer insights should really match that agile way of working. So this is why we are really working towards bringing this rapid testing mentality to the product marketing team at Maze. And yeah, we're open for any questions that you have. We'll stick around a bit to have a chat. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Being an amazing product marketing leader doesn't happen by chance. It happens by habit. Product marketing certified leadership has been built on the back of decades worth of experience from some of the world's best known brands with one goal in mind: helping you be the best leader you can be. Crammed with real life case studies, over 12 hours worth of content, templates, exams, and more, this course is everything you need to lead with authority, confidence, influence, and innovation. Every piece of material within the 7 modules and 29 chapters has been vetted, tested, and approved by senior level product marketers from companies like Amazon, Uber, and HubSpot, serving up game-changing insights throughout. By the time you've wrapped up the final module, you'll be able to define what it takes to be a great product marketing leader, build and scale your team, understand how to successfully manage your existing team, use methods for leveraging data, know how to become the voice of the customer, understand how teams work cross-functionally, and improve your strategic thinking. The beauty of the course is you'll have the freedom to work your way through the modules at a pace to suit you. It's 100% self-paced. You'll even get lifetime access to the curriculum, paving the way for refresher sessions forevermore. Visit productmarketingalliance.com to get leadership certified and spearhead your journey to the top.
Clue is a competitive enablement platform that collects and delivers intelligence across every department of every business. Clue organizes intel into cards, delivering competitive insights across the tools and devices your teams already use. Enablement teams also get superpowers, allowing them to collect intel from millions of sources outside your organization, as well as internal sources like Salesforce, Slack, and company emails. Clue allows them to go deeper and cover more competitors without any extra hires or late nights for the team. Collect, curate, compete. Clue. Competitive enablement for the modern enterprise.
Welcome back to the Product Marketing Festival. I hope you're enjoying the content so far. I want to thank you all for joining us and send out an extra special thank you to all our sponsors, partners, speakers and participants who together have made this event possible. Their sessions are bursting with insights to help you level up. But remember, the learning doesn't stop here. If you aren't already, you can become a PMA member and benefit from unlimited access to all this week's content, along with a whole host of other exclusive content and tools. What's more, why not check out Product Marketing Core, our industry-renowned certification? Join hundreds of your PMM peers and get certified today. And remember, have your questions at the ready. Simply post them in the comments section and get awesome advice from our experts. We've got plenty more magic up our sleeves that's guaranteed to blow you away. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the talks.
Hi, welcome everyone. I'm Varun, Product Marketing Manager at Tink, and I'm joined by my colleague Stuart, our Product Marketing Director. In this session, we are going to talk about the role product marketing played in pivoting a company from a B2C disruptor to becoming a B2B enterprise platform, and all the lessons that we learned along the way.
Thanks, Varun. For those of us who don't know Tink, and I promise not to make this turn into some kind of sales pitch, probably best to start by explaining a little bit more about Tink and what kind of challenger we mean and to what kind of leader. So the rest of the presentation has some context. Tink started as an industry challenger in the truest sense. We started life as a B2C company, challenging the banking industry with an independent standalone app. Consumers loved it, the banks not so much, which is why we're all the more proud now to be the market leader, not actually as a consumer app anymore, but as a fully B2B platform provider to some of the biggest names in financial services, including many of those very same banks. So back in 2012, the founders of Tink felt that banks were really failing their customers. And the industry as a whole was long overdue for the kind of transformation that we'd seen in consumer experiences, in media, in travel, and in many, many others. So they made an app that quickly 500,000 Swedes loved.
Yeah, I was one of them. I lived through my early 30s using the Tink app to manage all my finances. I was such a fan.
And your experience clearly demonstrated there was a consumer desire to be able to interact with finances differently, really, and to have more control over the financial data and how it could be used. And who was getting the benefit? Really, the consumers should have the benefit of using their financial data. And this was really the genesis of the open banking movement. And in many ways, it led to the very legislation that we have here now in the EU that requires that the industry be more open to competition and bring about more collaboration that really benefits the consumer.
And now we are a B2B company, Europe's leading open banking platform, serving big banks like NatWest and BNP Paribas, and payments giants like American Express and PayPal. We are now a developer-first company with more than 10,000 developers using our platform to, doing things like removing friction in the onboarding process, such as verifying income and account ownership, creating more engaging digital banking experiences and more seamless payment journeys. But this journey from challenger to leader, it wasn't a simple A to B journey. For one, you can't do it all in one go. It takes many steps, and in our case, it took 2 giant leaps. You are going to talk about leap number 1, which was us going from a challenger to a thought leader. And I'll talk more about leap number 2, which was us going from a thought leader to the market leader. But why were there such big giant leaps, and what was product marketing's role in making them happen?
Right, so let's look at leap number 1 first. This was the leap that would take us from a challenger to a thought leader. It's a fairly well established product marketing principle that you should lead to the product, not with the product. And in our case, we had to extend that really to aiming to be a thought leader to the product. With our consumer app, we generated consumer demand in the industry. And in effect, we'd been part of triggering a new market in open banking. So we really discovered that we had product market fit without then having a clear idea of exactly what the product was, or in fact, what the market was. So rather than package our product at that time, we set about packaging ourselves and packaging ourselves as experienced visionaries. If you're a successful challenger, then really you probably had some crazy idea that works. And you're either doing something that no one else has done, or you're doing it in a way that no one else has done it before. So when we started selling, becoming a B2B company, we were in effect asking people to join us in being a challenger. And that means that we were asking them to buy into a vision more than anything else. Like back then, I remember more than once describing this as being like a kind of field of dreams in reverse, where if they come, then you will build it, because you can't say for certain at that time what it is.
Yeah, I remember you mentioning the idea of field of dreams a few times, and I remember joining the company being very new and kind of uncomfortable with the idea of adopting this mantra, because it's just so, it just goes against what you think of as a product marketing manager.
Right. And it's not a conventional approach to product marketing. And it also meant that we had to take a more unconventional approach to positioning the offering. So naturally, since the very beginning of our product development, of course, we've been exploring and scoping the potential use cases of this nascent open banking technology and identifying where we believe the greatest value could be brought. But rather than doing this as you normally might to define the offering and the messaging, we were really using it to engage with the industry on a grand scale. We took advantage of we had a unique independent position from having been an outsider that allowed us to survey and interview hundreds of the most senior banking executives around Europe. And we asked these would-be customers, although they didn't actually think of themselves then as a would-be customer, we asked them how they saw the potential use cases and how possible and valuable potentially each one could be.
How are these guides received by the market in general?
Well, they were hugely effective for us. There really wasn't that much information in the space at that time about exactly both what open banking could do, or really how best to take advantage of it if you were a business. Like open banking existed for the consumers, but we were really at the very early stages of establishing how that very same legislation would benefit the industry itself. And by communicating, by engaging with these executives and producing this content, it gave us so much rich, deep, topical, unique content that we could use to fuel our brand positioning and to cement us as a genuine thought leader in this space. But from a product marketing perspective, it also gave us a couple of key advantages that we were later able to take advantage of. The first was that it enabled us to define the vocabulary that our prospects would later use when they came to find us. And it also gave us a seat at the table and a voice on the bigger stages, but now not as the disruptive upstart outsider, but rather as a knowledgeable and innovative collaborator.
It's quite interesting though, right? That a lot of those people that we saw as early influencers of open banking are actually customers now.
Yeah.
On a general sort of level, again, I find this so fascinating tactically because it's just so different from how you would approach product marketing in a classic sense.
Right, absolutely. Like it did not feel like the normal way we would have gone about doing things. Yeah. And you would normally want to have a more clear, defined, and easy to communicate offering. But as we deliberately didn't have that at that time, we had to adopt a sales enablement strategy of being extremely bespoke to the point of producing single-use materials. So really, the product marketing tactic kind of number 2 that I think is worth spending a little bit of time on in Leap 1 was sales enablement. We focused on building presentations and content that would inspire the biggest customers, prospects, with a vision and that would lead them to define what we would provide for them, like very much from their point of view. And no 2 pitches were the same. Mm-hmm. And we really had to make sure as product marketing managers that we really had the trust of our product counterparts so that we wouldn't oversell on what we could deliver, or at least not too much. But we definitely sold on an anything's possible and all-you-can-eat offering kind of basis. Yeah. It was pretty uncomfortable, to be honest, to be working this way as product marketers. We weren't doing things in the way that, like, ideally any of us would have wanted to do them, and it was super hard to calculate and communicate the return on investment of what it was that we were selling. Yeah. But we knew that it wasn't like it was necessary, and it was in line with the thought leadership strategy of the first leap. Yeah.
Again, I could imagine there were hundreds of presentations being worked on at any one time within the teams. How would you manage that?
Yeah, it wasn't easy to be honest. Yeah. It was really hard, especially as we knew that this way of working, embedding ourselves at that time more with sales and with product, and empowering and enabling them to really have these like one-time only pitches and interpretations of the offering. Like this could only have a limited lifespan. And we also knew that until we changed it, and we weren't ready to do so then, but until we changed it, things were only going to get more messy.
So now let's look at the second leap, which wouldn't have been possible to do from the beginning, no matter how tempting it may have been to try. But also, to be honest, it was a case of putting the pieces in place. So about a year ago, we realized that the industry and market had matured to the point that there were use cases and applications for open banking that were becoming more and more viable. From a product perspective, we had the technical capabilities to deliver these products to the market. It was now a case of doing what we as product marketeers do best, right? Yeah. Which is simplifying complex concepts, turning them into neatly packaged products, and focusing on customer outcomes, not on the technology. So in essence, there was a strategy shift of Tink as a company going from selling potential to selling products.
And that selling potential to products, I like my analogies. The first leap was Field of Dreams, but I remember at that time also, we found ourselves, like I thought of it as selling a bucket of Lego bricks so often. Like we had all the bricks, and it's a clumsy analogy, but I remember that we knew that our customers would be able to build whatever they wanted with these bricks. And like I think they saw that too, that the potential to build amazing, fantastic things was really there. But it's tough when there's no instructions, and you know that you're going to have to rummage forever in that bucket to find the brick that you need.
Yeah, definitely not the experience you would expect from market leaders. But I mean, for that, we needed products that were nicely packaged and easy to build. Because to get to that point of, from being from a big box of Legos to being able to create pieces that make sense, it takes a lot of work. Yeah. It takes a lot of strategic thinking. There's a certain amount of maturity that needs to happen in the market for that to happen. Let's talk about segmentation. So in the early days, it was a strategic decision to be very opportunistic, right?
The Field of Dreams.
Right. Yeah. And with those key customers now under our belt, we could really drill down into where the most value could be delivered and define where we could win. So from a tactical perspective, we spent a lot of time with sales and product, aligning on use cases, mapping that against product capabilities, where in Europe our products were available, what data points could we fetch in different banks across Europe, and just building a matrix of sorts that at the end gave us a list of, say, 5 to 10 clients that we knew we had to win. It also meant taking some really tough decisions, right? Having the courage to say no to pursuing some really attractive opportunities and big names. So what does that mean from a value proposition perspective? Well, we had to go from all-you-can-eat products to neatly packaged out-of-the-box products. This meant redoing all our sales presentations, the website, content, retraining the entire commercial team into a new way of working and looking at our product portfolio. And this is so much work, as we learned. We also discovered along the way that the customer experience was suddenly extremely important for us as a company. From my perspective, I had to embed myself into the product teams, bring a product marketing sort of flavor to building products, and in essence, I was representing the user. And that's where we knew we wanted to end up. We wanted to have a relentless focus on the customer, but we knew it would take us time to get there.
And that relentless focus on the customer, I think we had that in Leap 1 and Leap 2, but just in 2 very different ways. Right? And when it comes to relentless focus on the customer, like this is this is certainly not unique to us. And the most famous example is cited most often is Jeff Bezos. And there's a really nice quote that I like. I don't know when he said it, but he said, they went on the journey from challenger to market leader. And Jeff Bezos said that, you need to be stubborn on destinations, flexible on tactics, and relentless on progress. And I think we certainly saw that ourselves.
Yeah. So with that, let's summarize what were our learnings from these 2 giant leaps, as we call them. For us, being stubborn meant ensuring everyone was laser focused on becoming the leader. You have to out-engineer and out-market the competition. Number 2, to get ahead and stay ahead, especially if you have a legacy position as an outsider or a disruptor, the progress, it can't be made with small steps. There have to be some massive leaps along the way. And each leap hopefully brings the whole company to a very different level, which means you should be both flexible and bold in pivoting your product marketing strategy.
It was a really fun journey that we've been on, but it was also extremely fun talking with you today. So thanks very much for joining us. Thanks for the Product Marketing Alliance team for giving us the opportunity to share our experience and story. If you want to know more about anything that we've covered, or if you want to take the conversation further, we'd love to hear from you. You can find us both on LinkedIn or ping us in the Product Marketing Alliance Slack community. And of course, be sure to follow what happens next on Tink.com. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Being an amazing product marketing leader doesn't happen by chance. It happens by habit. Product marketing certified leadership has been built on the back of decades worth of experience from some of the world's best known brands with one goal in mind: helping you be the best leader you can be. Crammed with real life case studies, over 12 hours worth of content, templates, exams, and more, this course is everything you need to lead with authority, confidence, influence, and innovation. Every piece of material within the 7 modules and 29 chapters has been vetted, tested, and approved by senior level product marketers from companies like Amazon, Uber, and HubSpot, serving up game-changing insights throughout. By the time you've wrapped up the final module, you'll be able to define what it takes to be a great product marketing leader, build and scale your team, understand how to successfully manage your existing team, use methods for leveraging data, know how to become the voice of the customer, understand how teams work cross-functionally, and improve your strategic thinking. The beauty of the course is you'll have the freedom to work your way through the modules at a pace to suit you. It's 100% self-paced. You'll even get lifetime access to the curriculum, paving the way for refresher sessions forevermore. Visit productmarketingalliance.com to get leadership certified and spearhead your journey to the top.
Welcome back to the Product Marketing Festival. As we prepare to unleash another exciting session, I just want to say a massive thank you to our partners, sponsors, you, and our ensemble of speakers and participants for helping us bring this event to life. I hope you are finding today's sessions insightful, and I want to remind you that the learnings don't stop here. If you haven't already, you can become a PMA member and benefit from unlimited access to exclusive templates, frameworks, mentors, our entire back catalogue of event content, and much, much more. What's more, you can continue the conversation in the PMA's Slack community. If you aren't already a member, then hop on over and join the discussions today. And remember, this is your chance to get involved. Please share your feedback and questions in the comments section for our speakers to answer. It really is that simple. Let's resume the sessions.
Hello everybody and welcome back to Product Marketing Festival. I'm Igor, I'm head of marketing at Lemax, and I will be moderating today's panel on metrics, analysis and optimization. I'm joined today with Asya and Saket. Hi guys, I'm very happy to be here with you. Can you introduce yourself a bit to the audience and tell us why does this topic interest you?
Sure.
You can go first, Asya.
Sure. My name is Asya Bashina. I'm the director of marketing at a company called LinkSquares, which does end-to-end AI-driven contract lifecycle management for legal teams. And basically, one of the reasons why I think measuring and metrics is really important, especially for product marketing, is that you can't really manage what you can measure. And also beyond that, you can't really improve what you can't measure either. So if you don't have a baseline for how your product marketing is going right now, you can't optimize. And then you also can't justify the value of your work to the company. So if you're just churning out a bunch of launches and you're building out battle cards, but you don't know if they're effective or not, soon enough, people are going to start asking, what is it? What's the value of your work? What's the benefit here? How are you contributing to the business? Things like that, because there's no tangible number to go after. And so really, I think those are some of the important things to understand as you're trying to build out a metrics program, because otherwise you're not going to be able to grow the team.
Yeah, I like that because I completely agree how important it is to measure and to drive the team accordingly. To begin with my introduction, I'm Saket Toshniwal, and I'm the head of product marketing, growth, and CRM at LOVOO. LOVOO is a dating app with millions of users, and I transitioned into product marketing. Like first I was a product manager, then I focused on CRM, then and since it was I had to do like product feature launches and campaigns around that, and then I made the product marketing playbook, and I started to find this niche of product marketing, like like being data driven for product feature adoption, if I may say. And then I have the opportunity to lead an awesome team across product marketing, CRM, and growth.
Awesome. And I'll just jump in with a short additional introduction of myself. So I'm heading marketing and product marketing at Lemax. We are a travel software that enables travel agencies to create, sell, and operate multi-day tours. So we briefly covered the importance of quantification and measurement of the PMM output. But what do you use when it comes to metrics to define your team's success? So you started a bit about it, Saket. Can you maybe expand a bit? So what different
Yeah.
metrics do you use to define the team's success?
Yeah, so when it comes to define team success for product feature marketing, we use, like, let's say, three main parameters. First one is product feature adoption. So this is well, for every when we have product features, like every quarter we would have 3 product features or 2 product feature, one depending on major product features. There could be minor product features as well, major. So whenever we have a product feature, for example, icebreaker, we have different product marketing initiatives. Like, for example, if you want to increase the sending, the icebreaker or the message sending users of the daily active users. So these are product specific metric that ensures the success of the feature for the product feature adoption. Now, what happens in a very common case is at the time of the product feature launch, there's a huge spike and then it goes away because the product manager starts working on some other product feature and the attention on that feature goes away. So what we do now as the to eh, to have the to make sure that that spike remains at a much peaker level and it goes peak and stays at a peak, like at a high level. We have pre-launch, during launch, and post-launch thing. So the post-launch thing, we have one of the things which is called productization of the features into the life cycle communication. So we have user life cycle communication that is defined. So now that, for example, that icebreaker or successful launch of a particular feature with predefined metric, that also goes into the communication of the users in the life cycle. So when the new users are coming inside in the app, like 1 million users are coming in, or like, and then after some time, those users start getting communication also as per their life cycle journey about that specific feature. So you, for new users, you keep seeing that spike again and again and again and again and again. So it also adds into that communication. They discover the more value in the app. So it can be with video chat or best picks or daily surprise. It gamifies the experience for the users into the communication, as well as make sure that the product feature adoption happens over a period of time. Now, and the third important pillar is new launch experiments. So we really believe in a lot of experiments. So we do we every product marketing manager has a goal to, or metric to measure that how many experiments A/B test did the product marketing manager did in terms, it could be in terms of product like product placement, product discovery, or like testing a specific hypothesis before in a specific market before a launch. So each new launch experiment, it can be even like for a 10% of the audience. So making a clear positioning report for a, like, for example, a female premium, or removing ads in as a single purchase, or testing out a specific value benefit for a user as a feature. So this testing out an experiment in collaboration with designers, product managers, marketing people, and then sharing this success with the other team in order to productize this feature into a bigger market, or the entire app, is called an experiment. So for new recap, it is new launch experiments, productizations of feature into lifecycle communication. And the first and the most important is a product feature adoption.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that this widely depends on the stage your company is at. If from my experience, when the company is more in the pre-product market fit stage, it's more focused on the sales and
Yeah.
collaboration with sales. So what we tracked actually mostly was win rates. How do we combine the win rates with everything that we do, and other KPIs that show how much of adoption do all the materials that we do for sales, all the messaging, how much adoption does it have in the sales team. In post-product market fit, when I was working in companies that were in that stage, I actually agree a lot with you. Product adoption was one of the main metrics that PMM held. And it was done a lot with collaboration with product managers. But besides that, it was also conversion rates when it comes to inbound sales, so when it comes to inbound marketing. So I think that it widely depends on the stage that the company is in. Do you have any additional points on it, Asya?
Yeah.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I think I agree with your point, Igor, and Saket. Obviously, the way you measure LOVOO, to me, that's like the dream. That's the goal that we're trying to march towards right now at the stage that we're at as a company. We're just trying to build the baseline for measuring metrics or kind of measuring product marketing. And so I totally agree with your point, Igor, that it really does depend on the stage and the size of the company, and also like how much tooling you have available to you. So for example, like I think part of measuring product marketing is remembering that when you're measuring product marketing, you also want to get some buy-in from the product management team, especially on the side that's related to product usage. Because I think a lot of people, when you start saying something like, oh, we're going to start measuring the effectiveness of this, people start to kind of get a little shy or get a little nervous about it. I think it's sort of typical to, if you think about CRM and when Salesforce was first introduced, a lot of salespeople kind of felt nervous about it because it meant that their work was starting to be tracked. And so same too with getting information like product usage and sort of getting the product team to buy into like a product usage tool, which is why you have to even start a step before that and sort of gather the marketing metrics that you can to justify the value of drilling even deeper and finding out more information. So some of the stuff that we're tracking at LinkSquares for product marketing effectiveness are things like inbound demo requests, because all of our marketing communication, especially around a launch or after, the end CTAs do want to see a demo of this feature. And so when we see that spike going up, we know that our product launch messaging is effective and the emails that we send out are actually delivering interest. But then also it speaks to the website, which is also a tool that's owned by product marketing. Like, are we effective in actually driving folks through the website to request a demo? And then the last kind of piece that we also, there's so many different measures that we look at. We also look at sort of like increase in visits over time to our main product pages or our case study pages or use case pages. And then we also think about things like, what's a good proxy for product usage? So things like, how many logins per user are you seeing a month? Because if you're seeing more and more over time, or generally the trend is going upwards, it means that users are finding more and more value in the tool. And so that's sort of like where you start. I've even been at companies, to your point, Igor, that are even before that, where it's pre-product market fit stage. You're just trying to get someone to bite on that email that you're sending out. And so, you're going to be measuring more around like conversion rates or opportunities created with an email that you sent out. And that might be the only thing that you're measuring, or like visits to your site or views, things like that, more of those traditional marketing metrics. But certainly what Saket's describing is the dream. That's definitely somewhere where, obviously one thing to remember too is it's not a one size fits all. What might work for, say, a dating app company that has millions of daily active users might not work for enterprise software or something like that. But I think like the point that you want to get to is actually knowing feature adoption and then how users are accessing that feature over time. I think product usage is really kind of that key to that. And there's a ton of tools that you could use to learn about that or to kind of drill into that, whether it's Pendo, Heap, or other solutions.
Yeah, I mean, I think that definitely the product adoption part is one of the key metrics when it comes to retention. And for the more developed companies, for the companies where product marketing is, an established team where the product is, in the product market, they found a product market fit, and the product and the market size is growing, and market share is growing. Product adoption becomes very, very important, and it can very, very easily indicate the potential to churn. And I think that happens both in enterprise software, in B2B, in B2C. Product adoption can be really important, because no matter the segment, so B2B or B2C, there's a human using it behind it. So that's definitely something to look into. And we all of us set a lot of different KPIs, a lot of different metrics. I personally sometimes have a feeling that PMMs at the same time own and control all of the KPIs and none of the KPIs, because we touch upon so many different processes, so many different departments. It's a very cross-functional collaboration all the way. And sometimes what I was struggling with, what I was actually talking to some of my mentors with, is how to say what is solely a PMM KPI. So what do you track because you're responsible and accountable for it? And it sometimes always circled back to product adoption, sales collateral adoption, and win rates and conversion rates. Sometimes, it's something that can come back, that always came back as with whoever I was talking to, as one of the main KPIs that PMMs own. Do you have different opinions or different experience when it comes to owning and being accountable for different KPIs?
Certainly.
Saket?
So,
oh, sorry, go ahead, Saket.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I completely agree to both of you in terms of the kind of company you or the kind of stage that you are in. It makes a difference. For example, if you're an enterprise or B2B, the way you're measuring is very focused on sales or conversions or getting users and getting customers on the landing page or et cetera, et cetera. So whereas for us consumer company, we and which is much more established, it is a bit different when it comes to it is much more data led and much more metric driven and revenue focused rather than
I think we lost Saket for a second. So from your point of view about owning and being accountable for different KPIs, do you see anything different from what I said? Then can you expand a bit on what were the KPIs that PMMs actually not only tracked, but owned?
Oh, he's
we
back.
lost you, Saket. Sorry. Yeah, you're back.
Hello?
We lost you for the last almost a minute. Asya, we'll continue with you and then move on to the next question later with Saket.
Sure. So I think, to your point, I think there's different metrics too that one note that I also wanted to make is there's different types of metrics. There's sort of like external results of like, oh, how are users using your feature? But there's also internal ones as well, like, product marketing's sales enablement productivity, for example, like how many pieces of content is product marketing responsible for, how many launches, how many like case studies that they release. And those are all internal metrics. I think those, obviously product marketing is fully responsible for those. I think to your point, there's like ones that kind of could be mistakenly product marketing influence, like number of sales, things like that overall in the company. Like that's a team effort. You can't take that credit for yourself, but you can do things like, oh, this specific product launch drove these specific demo requests. You have to kind of drill in and be like, okay, where did this demo request come from? But once you get that insight, that's pretty helpful as well. And then certainly like, you know, site visits to the pages on the site that you own. I think that's another one, or like most popular case studies is another one, if that's something that your team owns as well, or even like drilling down to like customer satisfaction. If people are saying things like, oh, like you say you have a customer advisory board, people's satisfaction with a customer advisory board meeting, things like that. That's like in some organizations that's owned by product marketing. And so like, those are things that say product marketing can specifically control. Other things like, I don't know, overall leads brought in, you have to kind of suss out where those leads came in. But I'd say like those are probably the ones that product marketing could control. Certain other ones like product logins and usage, if that number is going up over time, you also want to make sure that that number is like per user versus like over time, because then you might get some skew like, oh, the product usage is going up. That's great. It's like, well, we also added like 600 customers. And so that's not your credit necessarily. But I think also when you take those product marketing metrics, it's important to give credit where it's due, being like, yeah, you know, like product, we had a really great product launch. This feature really resonated with people. Here's the marketing result for that, but not kind of share the wealth with the results as well.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to product launch, I think it's often, especially in the enterprise, B2B enterprise software, it's, you know, sometimes forgotten how important is still to, you know, send those product releases, have the launch communication. And I've seen often launch communications where PMMs were not involved, and it was a feature list. So definitely, you know, PMMs being involved in the launch communication can help make the adoption better. And you just said a very good point. You know, it's here is not about owning and taking credit for things. It's definitely about, you know, measuring to know how to improve, and measuring to know are you doing a good job. And especially when it comes to product marketing, that is so early in the development stage, when it comes to being a separate department, being a career path, taking those metrics and to get the buy-in that you need to get from the senior management, from actually the rest of the company, you know, for them to think that you're not only an executor of something, that you can contribute as well. I'm glad to have you back, Saket. We continue to talk until you resolved the difficulties. I think that one of the most common sentences in the last year was, "You're muted. Can you hear me?" And we lost you. So I'm glad to see this happen also on this panel. Okay, let's continue. When we were touching a lot upon different stages where the company is in, and you know, generally, is it, you know, an established company, a new company? What to focus on? Maybe Asya can give here a good input. What to focus on the early stages of the PMM in the company, and now we're talking more about the internal metrics. So not about conversion rates outside and so on, but more of the internal metrics. You know, how to establish PMM as an important part of the team.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think like a lot of it, the first kind of step you want to prove, and this is in some ways, I sort of view this as a bit of a vanity metric, but your productivity, like how can you kind of like, can you jump on product launches right away and churn out content? Can you release that content? How many sales trainings are you running internally? How many videos are you working with your video team on to release? How many case studies? I think that kind of proves, that's like the first step in proving out the value of product marketing, is showing the expansiveness and being able to say like, oh, we have this awesome case study. We're going to go and film it. Oh, you know, sales asked us to build out 5 documents. So we're going to go build those. I think that is the best way to sort of establish product marketing, is just by starting to do things and kind of building those metrics, building out those numbers of like, oh, we just launched 6 products this month. We just released like 2 case studies. We just built out these 3 pieces of sales collateral. I think with that too, one thing you want to be reporting on in some fashion is, or building out even, is process. I think that's the best way to sort of establish things right away. Like, what is our product launch process? How does it work? How does it pull on with different teams? And then starting to kind of optimize that piece. And then with that too, as a close follow, building out that sales enablement process, because, you know, one of the things that I did early on when I joined LinkSquares is actually build out that sales enablement process, because I found out that sales was bringing up stuff that we wanted to build, that they wanted us to build in Slack, or they were sort of having their own conversations about what it is that they needed. And then some of that stuff didn't make it over to marketing, or marketing kind of lost track of some of the requests. And so what ended up happening was sort of this black hole of requests, and there was no way to measure, there was no way to track. And so establishing that process actually enables us to understand exactly like, what are the needs for the sales team? What are their priorities? How are we delivering against those? Like, what metrics do we have to defend that? And so I think those are all pieces that you want to have to at least establish product marketing, and then kind of build from that foundation.
Yeah, I would actually agree. Saket, do we have you here with us? Do you want to expand on
Yes.
what Asya said?
Did you hear my voice clearly?
We can hear you now.
Okay, so yeah, I was suddenly having so there's actually, I'm in India at the moment, and there's like thunderstorm happening in Calcutta.
Oh no.
So that's why I just wanted to see, like, my internet went off for a bit, so I switched to another network to come back. Yeah, so I think Asya mentioned a couple of very good points in terms of metrics that we measure. When it comes to measuring the metrics, we use like a couple of tools like Tableau, GCP, Braze, and I always tell internally that like, when it comes to their product specific metrics, and there are metrics for the things that you're doing, like experimentation, or the number of features that you productized, and that is showing certain outcomes, like number of email opens, or those are like channel specific metrics. But when it comes to, I tell my PM tips to optimize the PMM, is like, we have people, process, and speed, right? So these are the 3 things, but you can only really pick 2 of them to between people, process, and speed, to pick 2 and make a difference. So if you get into too much process, then you kind of lose out on speed. If you get into too much speed, but you have to pick basically 2 in order to get to the outcomes of product marketing things.
Yeah. So you mentioned, I'm actually glad you mentioned the tools that you're using. One of the things that has happened to me and my teams in the past, we kind of used, and I'm going to be bluntly honest here, we kind of used not having tools as an excuse not to measure things. And what I realized with time, as I gained more experience, is from my point of view now, tools are the last thing you're taking, because first you need to decide what do you want to measure. How will you measure it, meaning how often? And then you can actually decide, well, what tool do you need? Because it can be, different solutions are available in the market, and it's a lot of them, especially when it comes to measuring marketing activities. So from my point of view, definitely what I've learned, and I learned it the hard way, is, find out what you want to measure first. Start measuring it in Excel, in Google Sheets, on pen and paper. It doesn't matter. Don't take not having a budget for tools or not being able to buy a tool at the moment as an excuse to not to measure. But that doesn't mean I'm against it, of course. I definitely see a value, in having some kind of software that will help you, to measure without you having to put a lot of inputs manually, and without the measurements taking a lot of time to be visible. Do you have any experience on that part too, Asya, maybe?
Yeah. I mean, right now we obviously don't have all of the tooling that I want. For example, we don't have a Pendo or a Heap or things like that. But sort of back to my original point, it's about getting buy-in for what you're measuring first, and kind of getting teams to agree to that. Like sales collateral productivity, yeah, that's something marketing can just start measuring. But with every when I say buy-in, what I really mean is like having an established process for either collecting information for that topic that you're trying to measure or collecting those metrics. So around product usage, you want to make sure you have buy-in from the product team and maybe the engineering team, because you actually have to implement the product usage tool within your product, or the sales enablement productivity. That's something that you need to get buy-in from sales on, and you have to actually build out a process with them versus kind of building one out in your own sort of space. But I think with tooling, you don't really need a lot to get started. I think it's enough to even use some of the existing tools that you have between Google Analytics, whatever it is, whichever CRM you're using, provided that you have a mechanism to track like calls to action and which landing pages are on, things like that. You may want to use a customer success tool like Churn Zero, which can at least give you some tracking for specific events like product logins or things like that. And then that's basically it. That's basically where you get started. You at least want to have the CRM to at least start tracking some of those conversion rates. If you don't have a success team, then trying to see if there's other proxies for usage that you might have within your products. And then just starting to share that information, because then people are going to be like, well, this is all great, but what I really want to know is how many people are using this feature? It's like, well, that's a great question. Let's think about it. What's the best way for us to gather that? I know we have a database of product usage metrics. That's something that's homegrown, but you need to know how to code to access it.
Yeah.
Do you know how to do that?
Yeah.
I do. Like, let me go dig around for that information. And so I think like there's sort of value in presenting something to get a reaction as well, because then that's going to actually lead you deeper down the path of finding the right number as well, and then also landing on the right tool. But you first have to figure out what it is that you want to measure, and then kind of build that process in, start collecting, and then find a tool around that.
Yeah. What I find that often happens with me and my teams, regardless of having different tools that measure different things, it all kind of ends up in an Excel sheet, in a dashboard with all of the information on one place. This may be a good idea for someone to develop a software that connects all the softwares and gives you the data. Just kidding. So yeah, the tools are important, especially when they are means to track something. But in my opinion, we always reverted back to Excel and having everything in the Excel sheet. Okay, we talked a lot about what do we want to track and what are we tracking. In the process, have you Saket, maybe you come to a point where you decided not to track something anymore.
Yeah, yeah. There has been many a times when we figured out we were tracking like several metrics, but we realized those are not steerable metrics. And once, if it's good to know certain metrics, it could be an indicative metric, but if it's not steerable, and if it's not, if those metrics are also not indicative to the steerable metrics, then I think it is not important to track. So there was a time when we were tracking how many users have replied to the messages, but then we figured out that replied to a message is not necessarily and such an important metric, because the reply can happen once, twice, thrice, or like n number of times, right? And then we realized that, and also the reply in a dating app is quite significant number of times. So then we stopped tracking those metrics. There was also times when we figured out, okay, if we need to increase the push opt-in rates of the users so that we can communicate the users through push notifications, then we then we need to like one of the metrics that we were trying to optimize is showing the screen dialog, etc. But then we figured out not just push opt-in rate, but we need to first optimize, like we looked into the data and we figured out that we have to measure push opt-out rates, which means the users were opting out of the push very quickly as they were receiving a lot of these push notifications.
Mm-hmm.
So then we kind of stopped tracking push opt-in at that point, but like I wouldn't say stop tracking, but then we reduced the focus there, but put our more focus on to push opt-out and try to optimize to our push notification or communication, a bit streamline our communication a bit more in order to track the metrics there. Then okay, new users coming in. So we were tracking users who started the registration but did not complete the registration. This was pretty good metric. But then we also started the different funnels when the user started the registration and then not completed. I know it does make a difference in terms of onboarding and where can we tweak the onboarding, but then that was not so relevant. As to the most relevant was when we start a registration and you have completed or not completed, and then did you get their first value of the product or not.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, and then we, as I mentioned earlier, we use a couple of tools. Like before we use Amplitude, Tableau. Now we use a lot of these things. We send the information from Firebase to GCP to have the representation of the data. But being said, it is first important to know what to track, how is it steerable, have the process aligned, and then the tool.
Yeah, the steerability is maybe the most important thing. I always, when we're talking about things to track, and even when other teams are showing the metrics that they track, I often ask, so what? Because the measure that you're measuring has to have an action point, and it has to be actionable after it, because you need, if there's no difference, if the numbers are high or low, if it makes no difference, and if it doesn't trigger an action for you, then it's not important to measure. Then it's an overhead, and you're just taking time to, take the measurements and to track it. If you do not in a split second go, oh my God, these are great numbers because they are very high, or what are we going to do because the numbers are down, then the metric doesn't actually matter. And I think we can all agree that we should focus on the ones that will help your business grow, and not only on the vanity metrics. And when I say vanity metrics here, I'm not against them, but just measuring something because the results are good and it looks good in the dashboard and has zero consequences behind it, it's I see the reason why would someone do it, but don't focus on it because it makes zero impact to your business. Would you add something on it, Asya?
Yeah. I mean, I think there are certain metrics that we've decided to move away from, like as I was saying before, sort of just the product login metrics, because I think, like, as an example, those metrics are less indicative of who's actually using the who's actually using the product and how much they're using it, because I think, like as I was saying before, there's like this wild skew, and so that's why we sort of start to shift away into how many times is a user actually logging into the product over time and seeing that number kind of go up. But I think, like, uh, other than that, there's other metrics. We haven't gotten to the point of, like, okay, these are the ones we're not going to track. But I think once we start getting deeper into product adoption, we'll even do away with some of those proxies that we're using to measure product adoption at that point.
Yeah.
So we touched also upon a way to optimize the team, way to make the team more efficient, and so on. Do you have any tips on how to optimize the team of product marketers? For me personally, the whole marketing team works in weekly sprints. We actually do have weekly plannings on Monday. We use Trello board, which I found most easy to onboard on and to use when it comes to planning of our activities and the goals that we want to achieve. And then on the next planning, we take the first 10 minutes just to see what happened with the last week. Did we do everything that we planned? Why didn't we do what we didn't do? And also, this is the thing that we are measuring internally for ourselves. So how many of the sprints are we actually delivering, into the capacity that we planned, and how much are we off? And of course, in the beginning, we were way off. We were, very sure of ourselves and planned a lot in a week. But what we started doing now is we plan about 60% of our time and leave the 40% for ad hoc meetings, for unexpected situations, and it usually comes then to 100%. But if it happens that you didn't have a lot of ad hoc meetings and you actually have a lot more time left, you just take something from the next week that was planned and do it in the week before. So definitely, the sprints are not only for developers anymore. If you ask me, we do have our own version of it, and we do find it very good for the team optimization and the importance of tracking the velocity of the team and how are all the tasks going. How do you structure your teams? Saket, can you go first?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I want to get into, like, how do I structure my team as well as the work. So firstly, my team has a lot of collaboration with. It's a very cross-functional team. So it has a collaboration with CRM folks, growth folks, as PMs, designers, etc. So we have weekly sprints where we do the weekly planning. So we follow Scrum. We do weekly planning. And however, the retrospective happens every 2 weeks, but we have daily stand-ups where we talk about what we did yesterday, what are we doing today, and at 9:30 in the morning. Then we have when we plan the week, but we don't plan just the feature that we are working. We plan the week as well as when we plan the roadmap for the feature launch, or when we plan something that is long. So we just plan the entire stuff and break it down into chunks so that we can squeeze them and squeeze the most in the week and get the most out of the week. let's say when we know the goal of the launch, when we know if we have to do a market research or competitive analysis, when we have to find out what segmentation do we need, or the positioning of the campaign, positioning of the product, or the messaging that we need, or finalize the messaging or the PR stuff, or we have to get the collateral or designs from the um, designer, so request that, then in product onboarding versus email onboarding, so or push notifications, the stuff that we need for that, or develop a go to market plan for that, for and getting buy-ins for the go to market plan, or setting that launch date, outline the timeline, sharing upcoming launch with the marketing, CRM, performance marketing, or change the work with the performance marketing to change the UA of the thing. UA, if you're focusing, let's say, on live video, and UA ads, and checking with also with talent. Like we have a couple of community managers to make sure that we have, when we're launching that feature, validating whether do we really need it, with the community before with the community managers. So it can be, so it's pre-launched, during launch, post-launch that I had mentioned earlier. So it is like launch announcement, blog, making that blog stuff. So different parts of the launch um, is is planned in different weeks, but of course it is planned in a form of a scrum, but it is obviously planned in a form of a roadmap as well. So PR stuff, social media, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, then paid campaigns that we do, or the support. Like we also have to align with the customer support there. So the customer support, then the CRM stuff, defining the target, segmentation, build a copy, QA, if you need to show a demo, or checking for the demo, or getting the users survey. So doing that, app store optimization, and post launch also the retro of the launch, integrating that feedback to the customer lifecycle, gather the feedback to uncover more opportunities, etc., and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah, what I saw when it comes to strictly following Scrum in marketing teams, we in our previous company we did have stand-ups, we did have daily stand-ups, but when the team became too big, it wasn't a daily stand-up anymore. It was a 45-minute meeting, and to have 45-minute meeting every day at the start of the day, it was just taking too much time. So definitely, what I would suggest is make your own version of it. Take the parts that do the best for your team, and then implement it and iterate during the way. I mean, how the teams change, how the dynamic change, so should your processes. And you, Asya, and your team.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of what you guys have shared has resonated with me. I mean, we definitely, as a marketing team, since we have a fairly lean team right now, but it's definitely growing, we do daily stand-ups, and we just go through around the Zoom, I like to say, and we like talk through what everyone's goals are for the day. For the product marketing team specifically, one of the ways that we optimize for growth is developing scalable processes, or if something breaks, like in the website development process, not physically breaks, but if the process breaks, or if we didn't define one, immediately sort of taking that insight to build out a future process and kind of document it out. I think the other piece that we do to optimize for scale is the product marketing team meets weekly, where we don't meet on Mondays, because Mondays are usually like catch-up days, kind of getting people's minds around the week, but we meet on Tuesdays to really kind of talk through what does the rest of the week look like, what are the priorities, what are we hoping to get out of our weekly product management meeting, what are we hoping to learn, what's unclear, what are some of the blockers there, things like that. And then in addition to that, we have a Trello board that the team keeps up to date with all the things that they're working on, and all the pieces of information that they're doing. I think the other piece that's really important for growth and scale is process. Like, I think it's important to develop out a sales enablement process that everyone's bought into, and a method to communicate with the sales team about their specific needs. Same thing with the product launch process. Like, you know, you may start with like a back and napkin scratch. Like, these are the pieces that we need for the product launch, but then you may want to build out that process of like, here's where we want to have the first draft of this, the second draft, here's who needs to weigh in when. And then you may, one thing that we started to do too is doing like proper project kickoff calls with the product team and then doing retros on that. I think that's something that we borrow from sprints is we do a retro right after like a major launch or major kind of project that we worked on, because those are great ways. And you know, I learned this one little term from one of my prior companies that was part Czech, part American based. And there's like little pakochkis, like little like nuggets of wisdom that you can just take and implement into future processes to, you know, to optimize them. And so I always like to look for those. And, you know, we did a retro a few weeks later than we needed to, just because of timing issues and things like that. You certainly lose a piece of that immediacy when you kind of push those out. But I'd say like the main pieces are also sort of keeping that steady stream of communication, doing those daily stand-ups, having like a broader weekly meeting where you just talk about product marketing stuff and priorities, and then other forms to kind of communicate asynchronously, like your Trello boards, your processes, things like that. One last thing too is like creating a channel where your product marketing team can speak candidly, just like a group or something like that, where folks can kind of like interact, share questions, bounce ideas off of each other. I think that's also important to scale. Because I think a lot of people, when they join a company, usually when they're junior, but they sort of save all the information for that check-in meeting. But now that we're all virtual, and now that most companies use Slack, Microsoft Teams, what have you, you can just share information as it comes up. So.
Yeah, I think I really like the discussion. We actually, I think, had 2 questions left, but we are out of time. And we need to bring this to a finish. So just a few ending words. I'm really happy that in the product marketing community, we started talking a bit more about the metrics and the analytics. I think it's natural that it's only now coming, to be a hot topic, because we needed to establish it as a community first. We needed to establish it as a career path, as a department at first. Do you have any short things to say? What are you looking forward to, or any closing words before we finish? Asya, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think one thing that I'm looking forward to is obviously we're recording the session remotely in each of our spaces. I'm certainly excited to get back into the world and get back into doing in-person events and actually meeting folks within the product marketing alliance in person, and hopefully doing the product marketing festival in person as well sometime. And then certainly I think, the other thing that I'm personally looking forward to from a metrics perspective is sort of drilling in even deeper and learning more about the users that I work with every day, and kind of seeing what other trends develop in the metrics industry as well, and learning from folks in at the product marketing festival as well. So those are some of the things that I'm looking forward to, but certainly want to say, like, definitely next time in person, would love to kind of get to know everyone in the group and everyone on this Zoom call as well.
Yeah, likewise.
Right.
Saket.
Yeah, likewise. I think she summarized it pretty well. So I'm looking forward to having this kind of like discussion in face to face, or in a setup in a live conference or something like that. I'm looking forward to the conferences, meeting people, building that connection. Also, like at the moment I'm in India, as I mentioned, I'm looking forward to going back to Germany, because I have it's like the flights are shut at the moment, so I'm looking forward to like travel. I used to travel a lot before, and since last 1.5 years, it's been like almost nowhere. So looking forward to that, and And I'm very excited that how this product marketing thing is becoming the role of product marketer is becoming so important in both B2B, B2C, and every stage of the uh, company. And I am very confident that in the years to come, this will be very growing and important piece for the company.
Thank you, Saket. Thank you, Asya. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. I really enjoyed the conversation. I think that we can go on for hours more, but we need to finish. And everybody that joined in, enjoy rest of the Product Marketing Festival and have a nice day. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.